Chuck Cooper come forward and deliver our invitation today. Thank you all very much.
Long, I promise. Let us pray together. I ask for it. God of love and justice, we humbly thank you for the life of your son and our brother Martin. We thank you for the courage you gave him to fight the good fight for liberty and justice for all. Because of his vision and the work of many others, our nation has progressed to this moment in time when Barack Obama may be inaugurated as President of the United States. But still the struggle for justice continues, and we implore your mighty hand on this day of justice to give those of us who follow after to continue to wage the ongoing struggle for freedom from want and fear and equity for all. People of color are still discriminated against in the darkened corners where no one is watching, and when the powers that be wink and nod and look away. Mothers with children are castigated for being on assistance, and then castigated again when they work 3 jobs to take care of their children for not being good mothers. Our gay and lesbian brothers and sisters still stand outside the door, knocking and waiting to join the freedom party going on inside. The other able wait not only for access, but respect. When Jesus was here on earth, he said, "The foxes have holes, and the birds have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head." And surely if Jesus the Christ lived on the streets of Portland, he would have nowhere to lay his head. Not even under a bridge where he might be awakened in the night and told to move on. He would have no place to keep his few possessions without their being in danger of being confiscated. In fact, he is walking the city streets right now, for he said, "Inasmuch as you have done it to the least of these, you have done it unto me." Empower and fill with wisdom those who never sit down or lie down, but always stand up for justice, whether they be Christian or Jew or Muslim or pagan or any other religion or no religion at all. Help us all in the days to come to speak truth to power. May we be wise as serpents and harmless as doves, so that we may win the hearts and minds of the city to care, not only for those who pay taxes or use influence and affluence for power, but for all of the people within the city gates. Make them wise and compassionate rulers, so that when they come to the end of their journey, they may have it said to them, "Well done, good and faithful servants." Grant us all courage for the living of these days. Amen. Amen.
Good job. Yeah! There ain't no power like the power of the people, and the power of the people is love. Say what? Ain't no power like the power of the people, and the power of the people is love. Say what? Ain't no power like the power of the people, and the power of the people is love. Ain't no power like the power of the people, and the power of the people is love. Say what?
There ain't no power like the power of the people, and the power of the people is love.
What?
There ain't no power like the power of the people, and the power of the people is love.
There ain't no power like the
Power of the people, and the power of the people is love.
Say what?
There ain't no power like the power of the people, and the power of the people is love.
We're like, they're not now.
Get out of the show, people! Lord God!
Polygraph me and all that stuff.
Hey, how are you guys?
Peace.
You bet.
Up with peace and down with war.
Hey, you know what? We're just as good as MLK, baby.
That's right, we are.
We're gonna go change the world.
Same message.
Would you give your life for peace?
Heck Yeah.
I would.
Yep.
I would. Absolutely.
Good to see both of you.
It's easier
Good to
to
see
give
you
your life
too.
for peace, to give your life up for peace than to live for peace. So you gotta live for peace.
I'd rather die for peace than live for war. Yes, I would.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Speak up.
Use the mic.
Hello, my name is Rios, and I am grateful for coming here. I am an advocate for women, children, men, and people living with mental illness. I'm also an advocate for those who experience homelessness, poverty, and those in transitional housing. Today on Martin Luther King Day, I want to tell my story and hopefully share a vision of how we can work together to advocate for others, to build a stronger community and how we can communicate as one voice, one person. This work is important right now, especially with the economic struggles that more and more people are dealing with. Here in Portland, right now there are more people who are losing their jobs and losing their housing. There are more people who don't know where they are going to find a safe place to sleep. I have a friend who works 12 hours a day for minimum wage, and he lives on the streets. He comes to my place for a shower and an occasional meal. But he's like lots of others in our community. He works hard, but he's worried about a safe place to sleep. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. I moved to Portland November 13, 1995. I was just released from prison in California, and I was starting a new life and focused on finding and connecting with my oldest daughter. She was about 10 years old at this time. I had her at a very young age. It was time to become the father she needed and deserved. I had gone through a lot of tough times trying to find her. Last that I knew of where her house was, she was with her aunt and uncle at this time, on her mother's side. Unfortunately, I lost my job, and the hotel I was staying in was a drug-infested place, and I started using and abusing drugs. I started all too easy for myself. I was just so into the mix, everything I was using, drugs, pills, alcohol. Later I found out they called me a polyaddict. Really in the height of my addiction. It didn't matter where or who I got it from. I sometimes sold it, stole it, gave it, sold items. I was called a person who was running and gunning or sketched out, meaning out of your right mind. Eventually I hit the bottom. And was literally found by Sergeant Walsh inside a dumpster by Blue Dome. I was given my morning wake up in the complex. Walsh took me to training for Canada, and I started to learn new survival skills, different from the one I learned on the streets. I started coming to sisters instantly when I moved to Portland. But after getting clean and moving into transitional housing, I started to show a new life, learning from philosophies of nonviolence and interpersonalism. I joined Sisters staff on December 7, 2007. By working at Sisters, I have been able to take my street smarts and combine them with new skills. One of the most important things I have learned and taught myself is the ideal of empowering others and learning to share power. To me, the ideal of sharing power is that I learn from others and others learn from me. I had other people help me get clean, so I have others get clean. I had others help me get housing, so I help others get housing. By working with each other and listening to each other, we build relationships and we learn from each other. This is the difference between empathy and pity. I know in my life that when I listen to others, I become stronger. I know that if the city listens to us, the city will be stronger. We need our city to listen to people with experience of living on the streets. We need our city to make sure people are kept safe, that people have a place to live, that we have support and resources for people to get cleanly states. Right now, we need to share power with the city, and the city to share power with us, and here with what the community needs. Right now, I know we need the city to do two things. We need to repeal the Sit Lie ordinance that makes it illegal to be homeless. Or on the streets without resources or a safe place don't get important for people to go.
Down with money slavery.
Second, we also need to repeal the anti-camping law. Without affordable housing units or even short-term fixes like cemeteries, this law says that you can't sleep outside, but it criminalizes having a tent or even a tarp to provide some protection from the elements. Solutions by step are outside our minds. Martin Luther King taught us a lesson that every person has value and every person is worth listening to. Our new president, Barack Obama, knows that we are all Americans, not white Americans, black Americans, Latino Americans, Native Americans.
Officer, come join us.
As we celebrate our new president, we need to make sure that we listen to each other and remember that no person should go without. Change comes tomorrow, and empowerment grows strong. Thank you.
Producing it. Pickle, see me? And the front march.
That was for ASC. Alright, that's alright. Right. So that's really
above us, only sky. Imagine all the people living for today. Imagine heaven. I want if you can.
Between my brothers and my sisters all over this land.
I just want to say before you come up here, Commissioner Leonard, we're going to be getting your back. I want you to stay out front with us, and thanks very much.
Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. began planning what he called the second phase of the civil rights movement of the 1960s. The first phase was the struggle to establish racial equality for all in this country. However, Dr. King hoped to address what he called the limitations of our achievements in the second phase. Dr. King believed that the economic discrimination suffered by poor people of all races was a limitation to the achievements made by the civil rights movement. Thus, Dr. King announced the Poor People's Campaign, a movement to broadly address the economic inequalities of all people in the United States. He announced that the new movement for economic justice and equality would be exclusively about economic justice for all Americans, African American and otherwise. Said Dr. King, and I quote, "It must not be just about black people. It must be about all poor people." And Dr. King continued, "We must include American Indians, Puerto Ricans, Mexicans, and even poor whites." Dr. King announced a Poor People's March on Washington, D.C. that would create a new beginning for fighting for economic justice for all people. That march was to take place May 12, 1968. He envisioned creating a poor people's agenda that would demand, through nonviolent advocacy, that Congress pass an economic Bill of Rights. Specifically, the campaign requested a $30 billion anti-poverty package that would include a commitment to full employment, a guaranteed annual income measure, and increased construction of low-income housing. Tragically, Dr. King was assassinated a little more than a month before the Poor People's March on Washington. Many believe, including me, that is why the economic passage Dr. King was working on to champion was never passed by Congress, because he simply wasn't there to fight for it. It is a stain on this country's history that the Poor People's Bill of Rights died along with the body of Dr. Martin Luther King. That story is illustrative of a common mistake many people make about Dr. King. That is, in thinking that he exclusively was a champion of civil rights for women and men of color. He was that, but he was also a strong fighter for the rights of working men and women. In fact, let me remind you of the words Dr. King spoke in the very last speech he ever gave in his life, and it was about working men and women. Dr. King was in Memphis not to speak about civil rights, but rather he was standing up and with the city of Memphis, as Varner called them, sanitation workers. In the neighborhood I grew up in, we called them garbage men. And they were on a decent living wage from the city of Memphis. And what has been known as his "I've been to the mountaintop" speech, the main speaking points of his speech are rarely remembered. In his remarks, Dr. King said of the striking garbage men, "Be concerned with your brother. You may not be on strike, but either we go up together or we go down together. The issue is injustice. The issue is the refusal of Memphis to be fair and honest in its dealings with its public servants, who happen to be sanitation workers. Now, we have to keep attention on that." In fact, in May 1967, in front of the teacher convention, Dr. King said the following: "You see, no labor is really menial unless you're not getting adequate wages. People are always talking about menial labor. But if you're getting a good wage, as I know for some unions they brought it up, that isn't menial labor. What makes it menial is the income, the wages." Brothers and sisters, I submit to you that our country still does not understand that it wasn't just about the job that Martin Luther King was fighting to get to the sanitation workers in Memphis the day he was murdered. It was about a decent living wage job that he was fighting for that horrible day that he was struck down. So join in arms with me in fighting for not just jobs for all of God's children, but dignified pay, health insurance, and a pension that will see you through to your full. So when I agreed, Patrick asked if I would speak, and when I agreed, I asked who I was going to be speaking with, and they said, well, you'll be speaking along with a long list of people, including including Ann Bowman. And I said, well, now, am I before Joanne or after? So I've been doing this a while. So they said, well, you're right after Joanne. I said, well, we're going to have to talk about it. So not only do I have to go before Joanne, so people will actually think what I say has some important meaning, I want to introduce Joanne. So I get to introduce Joanne. I've never been able to do that before. She and I served in the Oregon legislature together. Not only did we serve together, we sat next to each other. More than once, the Speaker of the House threatened to have us removed as two parents, getting each other in trouble in the back of the House chamber. Joanne, I remember sitting and watching her give speeches. Just as I was sitting there, she would sit to my right, and she would stand up, and what I was always struck with, she would never use notes. I've always had to use notes, just to keep myself on track. She got up and she gave these powerful speeches on abuse of power, on racism, on economic injustice. In fact, one day, a powerful lobbyist down in Salem came up to me and said, I think Joanne just likes to give powerful people help. And I said, well, Joanne just tells the truth, and they think they're in help. Ladies and gentlemen, Ann Bowman.
Must look like the commissioner on a good day. He was very kind to me in his introduction. I was sitting here thinking of all the things he could have shared. You guys look absolutely beautiful out there. But before I start my presentation, I'd like to ask everybody who is 25 years old or younger to please stand. That old fogies like me don't like to admit is that every significant movement in this country happened because of the youth. Every single one of them. Because even during the Civil Rights Movement, even when Dr. King was being brutalized and adults were being brutalized for the sheer right to vote, to live where you wanted to eat where you wanted to, there were young people out there saying, I'm tired of this. This is not okay. Now the adults, because they had been around for a while, and they understood that changing laws takes time. The adults would say to the young people, it's going to take a little while. Just be patient. It's okay. It's not going to happen today, but it's going to happen. Right? It was the youth that said, oh, no, this is not acceptable, and I will not bow down to an unjust law. I refuse to allow people to tell me because of the color of my skin I cannot be whatever I want to be. It was the young people in this movement, in this country, at this time, that when Barack Obama 2 years ago said, I want to be your president of the United States of America, it was the young people that said, yes, it is possible, yes we can. That's what he said, and that's what the young people said with him. Yes we can. I gotta tell you, old fogies like me, I was sitting back saying, look, I grew up in the United States of America, okay? I know that white people are not going to go behind a booth and vote for a black man for the president of the United States. It just ain't going to happen. I'm sorry. I'd like to see it happen. I'd like to live long enough to see that reality. But I couldn't believe. And not because I'm not an optimist, because I am an optimist. But when I look at the dropout rate of African Americans in this community, that's why I couldn't believe. When I look at the high incarceration rate of African Americans in our community, that's why I couldn't believe. Because how is it possible, on one hand, for us to vote an African American president own community. How is that possible? How can we separate this brave man who put himself out there and said, I will be your president? But guess what? He says, I'm president of all the people. All the people. Imagine that. When was the last time a president told us they were going to be president of all the people? Right? I want to thank our young people. Because they believed, we started believing it's possible. This is really possible. And then what happened? We started seeing primary race after primary race, and all of a sudden, it was, is it possible? Then there was one Democratic candidate left. And then we were like, oh, maybe they'll vote Republican, because could they really vote an African-American man into the highest office in this land? Is that possible? Well, I am happy to say that in my 52nd year on this earth, it happened. I didn't think it would in my lifetime, but it did. And I thank the youth, because without the belief of the youth early on, we would not be at the cusp of this historic time. Now let's talk economic bailout packages. Let's talk economic stimulus. Now, we got a Congress that decided that we'd give the industry that screwed up our economy $1 trillion. Now you would think if you're going to give somebody that kind of money, that you would say, okay, now here's what I want you to do with it. Right? You would think there'd be some criteria, right? Wouldn't you think there'd be some criteria? There'd be some very specifics of what to do with that money, right? And so, as regular people, we're thinking, $780 billion, how do you even wrap your mind around that? And we're going to give it to the people that created the problem. But you know, we're people that believe. We have faith. So we said, okay, they gave half the money. We'll see what they do with that half. So, did they do the stuff they told us they were going to do? Did they stop foreclosures?
Hell no.
Did they stop job losses?
Hell no.
Did they stop companies from closing down?
Hell no.
And so, we must be asking ourselves now, are we the stupidest people on the planet? I mean, what is wrong with a country that would give $1 trillion to people that messed up our entire economy and then put nothing in place to hold them accountable for it? So here we are. We got the governor of Oregon talking about economic stimulus. We even got our good city council talking about economic stimulus. Here's the question I've got for people that want to talk economic stimulus. I want to see in writing. How are we going to get poor people employed with this economic stimulus dollar? How do we make sure that our youth are first in line to learn skills that are going to serve them for the rest of their life? How do we make sure that the people who have not benefited in our society are the first ones to benefit from an economic stimulus package for the people? Dr. King understood that you cannot have civil rights without economic justice. He understood that. And it is our job to continue to do the work that Dr. King started. We can't sit up and rest on our laurels because we have an African-American president. You know how hard the road is going to be for our first African-American president. He's got the biggest mess of any other He's got the biggest mess to clean up than any other president has had before him.
Thank you, Mark.
But you know what? I believe he is a smart man. I believe that he has surrounded himself with smart people. And I know for a fact that if each of us make a commitment that we're going to work with him to get the change that we want to see, we will in fact be successful. It is our job, because remember, President Obama has no vote in Congress. It's all those other people you sent to Congress that have votes in Congress, okay? So when he's been in office for 24 hours and people start saying, my life didn't change, remember, he doesn't have the vote. But it's our job to hold those people with the vote accountable for moving his agenda forward. As Dr. King said, I may not live to get to the promised land with you, but I have a vision of what's possible. I believe we all share a like-minded vision. We want to live in a city that respects everyone with dignity and respect, regardless of where they live, how much money they have, what color their skin is. We want to live in a city that creates opportunities for everyone. We want everyone to succeed in our city. And it shouldn't matter where you work, that you should have access to affordable quality health care. What Dr. King said,
$10 beers on the sidewalk.
what Dr. King said was that one of the biggest crimes in our society was not providing health care to everyone who needed it. Now, we have an opportunity this year to get health care in Oregon for every man, woman, and child. But the only way we're going to get it is if you join me at the legislative body making sure that they pass health care for everyone. Doesn't matter where you started life, but if you're an Oregonian, you deserve affordable quality health care. And now,
What a celebration, huh? We came here to celebrate today. Are you feeling like you're having a celebration?
Yeah!
I'm the Portland organizer. I'm a community organizer with Oregon Action here in Portland. And I'm just, let's celebrate community organizers. Varner and I go way back organizing here in Portland. What we're going to do right now, we're going to do what most organizers do, is we're going to give you guys some next steps. I specifically want to give you next steps as it relates to healthcare. I want to finish. I want to make that quote that Martin Luther King used on healthcare very clear. He says, "Of all the forms of inequality, injustice in healthcare is the most shocking and inhumane." Oregon Action, we've got principles that we prescribe, that we support, that we push as part of our healthcare issue, our initiative that we're working through here in Oregon. We're working both at the state level and we're working at the federal level. At the state level, we have I want to give you guys some action steps outside on the desk. On the first table, as you see as you go out, you'll find a commitment sheet that says, yes, I will commit to the following healthcare action steps. That I will talk to my family, friends, and neighbors regarding the need to take action. That I will participate in Oregon Action's Lobby Day in Salem, March 18th. That I will contact my senator or representative by calling, emailing, or writing a letter. That I will become a personal advocate with my healthcare provider in my own behalf. And I will join a grassroots effort to reform our healthcare system. Are those things you can commit to?
Yeah!
If you can commit to that, stand up and say, I commit!
I commit!
Okay. All right. The other thing you can do is one of our senators, Ron Whiting. We've been trying to get him to sign on to a national Healthcare for America Now campaign. And outside on the desk, we have commitment cards, or we have cards where you can actually put a stamp on it and send it to Senator Whiting, telling him to support Healthcare America Now. And that's something that we need you to do, and we're asking you to fill out a card, put a stamp on it, and send it to Senator White. We need to get him on board fully. Don't you agree? Thank you very much.
Good. We also have, is anybody here with Jobs with Justice? Yeah. Jobs with Justice. Do you have their postcards on the Employee Free Choice Act here today?
Put you on the spot.
We have also out front, I just want to call this out, apparently in the state of Oregon, we have no civil rights division in our Oregon Attorney General's office. This is something that I learned today that I was actually kind of shocked and dismayed to learn. There's a petition that also is outside on the table, so people could take a moment to sign that petition to convince the governor to restore funding so that we can have a civil rights division in our Oregon Attorney General's office. People should take a moment. It's on blue paper outside on the tables. Please take a moment to do that. Now, Sisters of the Road, with Oregon Action, with Central City Concern, with other organizations, we're going to be looking a lot in the coming next few months at the county budget cycle, the state budget cycle, the city budget cycle, because what we're seeing is that the work that Sisters, other organizations do, actually Sisters doesn't take public money in that way, but a lot of our folks that do service providing for people who are low income in our city or people experiencing homelessness in our city, we're looking at losing a lot of that money. The history in our city is that we have had things like a sit-lie ordinance that says you can't sit on the sidewalk in downtown. In exchange, there's a notion that there might be services. If there are no services, there ought also not to be a sit-lie law.
Yeah!
So what we're going to be doing over the next few months is engaging our community, working with the service providers and saying, look, we can't be cutting services and having laws that make it illegal to be homeless in our city. We can't have those two things. Those two things are contradictory. We can't have those things. What we're asking you to do is to support Sisters on that. People who are donors to Sisters, we appreciate you doing that. People who receive our newsletter, we appreciate that. If you're not on our action list, we have sign-ups, our action info sign-ups. We're also going to have those. We want people to sign up for that, and that's going to be a way for you to be engaged over the next few months in the work that we're going to be doing to deal with that, and also some of the other laws that negatively impact people based on their housing status. Another way to put it, the camping ban might be criminalizes homelessness, which is something I'm sure everyone here opposes. So with that, this is our program for today. One thing I do want to make note of is we have, folks who are feeling hungry today, we have sack lunches made up, 190 sack lunches for folks to take with them. You can grab those on the way out. And again, we want to thank you very much for coming today. We want to thank you very much for celebrating Dr. King. We want to thank Commissioner Fritz. We want to thank Representative and whatever in the future, Ann Bowman.